And a howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome back to SciTrek, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. We have a little something fun planned today. We have Joshua and Patten of CBR here today to talk some Star Wars.
Hello,
How
thank
are
you
ya?
for having me, Harris. It is a delight to be here, and looking forward to talking about that galaxy far, far away.
Oh, I'm stoked. We've been talking over the last couple of weeks, just trying to figure everything out. We were planning a Star Trek conversation for this morning,
It's
but
true.
the Force willed otherwise, I believe. And I'm excited for it because we accidentally started talking Star Wars for like 25, 30 minutes earlier. So I'm sure this is going to get pretty fun pretty quick. Yeah, but before we jump in, could you give our audience a little something about you? Just say howdy to everybody. Give a little
Sure,
backstory.
yeah. Well, my name is Joshua Patten, and I am by day I am a critic for CBR. I review Star Trek, sometimes Star Wars, write a bunch of features. I reviewed Andor recently. I am a original trilogy generation kid. My first movie memory, I mean, I swear I gained sentience in Return of the Jedi when it was when I was seeing it the first time in the theater. And I remember the experience, but now some of you special edition kids may not know what I'm talking about. But whenever I hear the original ending song, the Ewoks singing Yub Nub, and then it goes into that like choral version, and then it goes into the ending fanfare, I get a visceral sense memory of being in the theater, looking up at the screen, and I had two conflicting thoughts. I knew I had just seen the coolest thing in the world, and I was brokenhearted that it was over.
Ah,
So, luckily, every new Star Wars thing that comes out, from the prequels to Andor to everything on Disney Plus, the sequels, there's that kid still in here somewhere, just happy that there's more.
yeah, something that actually like is just so far out there that it just plays with the imagination. I love some Star Wars.
Yeah. Now,
Perfect thing to grow up with.
you were a prequel generation,
Yes,
right?
we talked about it. I'm the same age as the Phantom Menace.
That's
You're
right.
our Boba Fett, and I'm Darth Maul in it. As is what we're going for here.
Okay. When did you first see the original trilogy then? Was it like on TV or
We had a box set of the
okay.
VCR tapes,
The gold one,
and
right?
I believe so. My dad had
Yeah.
them for a long time, and like you, I guess my first actual, I think I gained sentience watching Smeagol turn into Gollum in Lord of the Rings. So
That's a
that
solid choice too.
might have messed me up to a little bit at some point, but we'll know one day. I don't know. Star Wars though, I just don't ever remember not knowing, which is kind of, I guess, a lucky thing.
Yeah.
It's obviously formed the conversations we found here a whole bunch. But I don't remember, I guess, the very first time I ever saw Star Wars. I think the first memory I have of Star Wars outside of just sitting on a couch is going to go see, and it's not so great, but my heart still loves it just a little bit, is that Clone Wars movie real quick. And
The
to
Clone Wars
start it
movie,
off,
yes.
yeah, we
Yeah.
saw it with a whole group of friends. All of our parents went with us. We were 6 or 7, 8 years old, whatever it might have been. And it was just like, that's the first time I got to go like remember seeing a Star Wars movie in a theater. And it did make the sequels even more fun at that point.
See?
It's like, okay, I'm chasing that like high I had as a little kid, It's just,
Yeah. Now, like, I mean, I'll be honest, because of the Star Wars films, I remember watching that one and thinking, "Oh, this isn't for me." Although the first episode of the Clone Wars absolutely won me over. The second Yoda was talking to the clones, like, distinct in the Force, you all are. I was like, "Oh, that's what I need to hear." Like, that was it. But I would just want to circle back because we did have a similar experience in a way, because I was born in 1980 when Empire came out. You were born when Phantom Menace came out, and we came up for the first 3, 4, 5 years of our lives when Star Wars was ubiquitous in the culture. Like, you know, I recognized it when the prequels came out, and then again when the sequels hit, that like the way that, you know, there's the tie-in marketing, of course, but there is just, you know, Star Wars is a thing that sort of makes it, like, carves a place out in the culture and in the zeitgeist where it's ever present. There's no avoiding it.
I mean, the only modern thing I think that is even close to comparing it is obviously the MCU. But I think the only things that have actually hit that level are Star Trek and Star Wars. And the closest, of course, I would be remiss not to mention our sleeping giant of sci-fi, our favorite, old Stargate, just hiding out back there. But it although it had its huge moment in, I guess, pop culture, Star Wars and Star Trek just they're like you're saying, they just transcend a different level of the medium.
Stargate's where I was like, that's where I discovered James Spader, and I was like, oh, I'll watch this guy do anything.
And then the rest of your life was born because James Spader's. But
so let me ask you this, because I'm curious about your perspective as a prequel kid, because now when I was growing up, Return of the Jedi was the bad Star Wars. Like, all my friends, older brothers, all the older kids, you know, they talked about Luke's plan didn't make sense. He was a wimp because he didn't kill Darth Vader. The Ewoks, little teddy bears just to sell toys. And, you know, that was my favorite movie. It's still, like, again, I'm not much of a favorite guy, but lightsaber or blaster to the head, Return of the Jedi is it. So when the prequels came out, you know, I didn't like the way my generation reacted to it. Did any of that make it down to you as a kid? Like, did you know that the older Star Wars fans were being jagoffs about it, or were you just like, Star Wars?
I don't think I was aware that the older fans were pissed off about it until the sequels came out, and then people were starting to remember how pissed they were back in the day. Because I grew up, I feel lucky for it, honestly, just with the whole pop culture aspect of Star Wars then, because Clone Wars, just because I guess 2D Clone Wars was first, and then brought us into 3D Clone Wars, and at that point, everything was just good in its own, like, unique kind of way, which is awesome. And I never had a bad Star Wars movie, I guess, until probably after even the sequel trilogy ended, and I just kind of thought about it a little bit more. And it's not even that they're bad. I just feel like they're a little lazy sometimes. I would have liked a separate approach, but I still love certain aspects of them. Like, I think we talked about it. Like, we can get into the sequel conversation in a little bit, of course. Sure. But yeah, like you know, Rian Johnson is a great filmmaker. Don't necessarily love how he handled Luke, but outside of that, the story, if it wasn't like Luke and Leia in that story, that might be one of my favorite Jedi stories that you can make, you know, in a lot of ways. I get what he's going for. I just didn't know if we needed to subvert everybody's expectations that much, you know.
What I find really interesting about the sequels is because, again, my generation didn't really comport themselves as well as I would have hoped around that too. But I mean, it felt very familiar, because part of the reason I think that the prequels were so controversial is that, you know, for 25 years, we had been imagining like what the Jedi was like, what the Republic was like, you know, all these things, you know, how Obi-Wan and Anakin met, and you know, and then what we got, pure, undiluted George Lucas vision, was not what we expected. And I think that there are, you know, I don't want to pretend that like I walked out of my first viewing of The Phantom Menace like, I love this. I didn't know how to feel, you know. I was, again, there were parts that I was like, that was dope. And then there were parts where I was like, really? You know, and then as, of course, the trilogy went on, I felt like each film informed the previous one, and my appreciation for it grew. Clone Wars also really fleshed out in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith.
And that's almost a cheat code in a lot of ways, especially growing up with all of that, because it helped me understand this. It's not like I understand exactly what George Lucas's brain ever said. I don't know if any of us ever can, as much as we try.
Right.
It helped me understand, I guess, what informs a story in a lot of different places a little bit better, and I think it helped a lot of us late '90s babies, early 2000 babies, just that whole region of folk, grow up with it, and I think that's part of why people are a little angry with all the sequel stuff. Even the younger folks, all age wise, people are all kind of all over the place with it. But I think some of that might be we had all that extra information to inform, but we don't have the perspective to look back at what was actually going on with the people that didn't want to go watch a quote unquote cartoon at the time or something like that. And I don't blame anybody for not wanting to, especially in 2005. That's not the same as, or 2007, I guess. 2005 is the 2D animated stuff.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I feel very lucky in that sense, where Star Wars has always just been just a damn good time. Yeah. Where we didn't have that little politicalization of it, or not even that, just like the vitriol around it to a degree, until as of late.
Well, see, I think that is where our experiences differ, because it was vitriolic like crazy for me. I'm just trying to enjoy these little Star Wars movies, and again, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones wasn't all the way there yet, and people were being like real intensely negative about it. And I see, here's where I think with the sequel trilogy, with the prequel kids, I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed that the way some of the prequel kids kind of visited on the sequel generation, sort of the same tenor that my generation visited on them. Like, the thing that I always tried to remember, and the thing that I realized during the prequels, is that, these movies are for kids. Like, we wanted a movie in the Phantom Menace and the rest of the prequels that made us feel like a kid again. And, some of us got that, some of us didn't. But the important part of it was like, I remember, I don't remember if it was Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones, but I think it was Attack of the Clones, because I was, in the movie theater and, sitting there feeling my feelings. And as I was leaving, there was like this group of kids who just reminded me so much of how like my friends and I were about Star Wars. But instead of talking about Han and Luke, I think it was even like, who's better, Anakin or Obi-Wan, or, and instead of who's better, Han or Luke. And that's when I sort of saw the parallel. And, and I was like, oh, this is for them. If I can enjoy it, great. But this party is for the new kids. So and I think with the sequels, the thing that was interesting is like my generation, we didn't know shit about shit. Like, we didn't know what the Clone Wars was. We didn't know how the Jedi worked. The Emperor, we didn't even know his name unless you read the books. You didn't know his name. But with the prequel generation, coming from the prequels and then the Clone Wars, there was so much backstory that I think that when the sequels, specifically like J.J. Abrams, because he's all about that mystery box storytelling from like Lost to this, I think he was deliberately trying to do that thing that Lucas did in the the original trilogy, where they'd be like the Clone Wars and then say nothing about it. The Emperor shows up, say nothing about it. But I think because people are so used to knowing, oh, well, Darth Maul, he survived and lived on this planet, and his brother, Savage Opress, they came from the night. Like, there was just so much of that backstory that was filled in that they weren't, people weren't willing to engage their imagination in a way that could make it work. Now, I'm not saying you have to like it. There is no wrong answer about the Star Wars you like, the Star Wars you don't like. If you like one Star Wars thing, you're a Star Wars fan.
Exactly. If Andor's the only thing you've ever watched, it might piss off a lot of different folks in a lot of different angles.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Congratulations. You're a Star Wars fan. I know you feel the Andor fans are probably like, well, I'm an Andor fan. I'm not a Star. No, you're a Star Wars fan. But yeah, so like, I do know that like there is that thing where you see the movies and, pretty much since Return of the Jedi, my first thought after seeing a new Star Wars movie is, I don't think I need to see that again.
in a big way. Mm-hmm.
You know, and again, maybe this is now my approach to criticism. Like when I'm, as a fan, I'm not ashamed to say that I will meet Star Wars more than halfway, and I would much rather have fun with Star Wars than not. But when I do, like, when I write the articles for CBR, when I write stuff that's in I have a new book on Amazon.com. It's called Divided Allegiance: The Third Wave of Star Wars and Star Trek.
It's on the thumbnail and in the description, y'all.
It's just I was a political reporter doing the news, and then in 2017 I switched to doing entertainment full time, and that is when Star Trek was coming back and Star Wars was going in earnest. So I really got the chance to cover all this stuff. And so when I approach my criticism, I every critical review or whatever is based on an opinion. It's about your opinion. Like if someone says, "Oh, this is the best Star Wars," that just means it's my favorite Star Wars. Or if this is the worst Star Wars, this is the one I like the least, because there is no objective measure of a subjective form. But I do try to I do try to engage with it, though, on its terms. So if when I was reviewing, when I was writing a series of articles about The Last Jedi, I wasn't going to write about them from a place where I was like, well, here's the movie about badass Luke that I wanted to see. I tried to engage with The Last Jedi and see what, and try to figure out like where they were coming from, figure out the intention, and then we can talk about the execution. And, I understand why people were upset about it. I understand why Mark Hamill didn't like it at first.
Yeah.
But I do think that the decision to take Luke Skywalker, the galaxy's greatest hero, and knock him on his ass, show him fail, and then show him get back up again that was almost a message. Star Wars is for kids. I think that one was for us. Like, the kids, they're used to being disappointed by the adults. You know what I mean? But us, I think that the idea that Luke would, I'm not the same person I was when I was 19, 20.
No.
So why would Luke be? And, but again, we have such a passionate feeling about this character and what we wanted to see. And especially after, again, I enjoyed The Force Awakens too, but J.J. Abrams, he did do us a little dirty by giving us Luke Skywalker for 7 seconds. And I remember
Obi-Wan a little bit off there, just out there.
Yeah. And I remember hearing some interview where he basically admitted that was a choice he made because he didn't know how to put Luke in the movie and then not make it all about Luke. Which, that is, I understand it on one hand. I'm disappointed by it on another. But then what we got with The Last Jedi was all about Luke. But just like with the prequels, it was not what we were expecting. And that's one thing I think Star Wars is uniquely situated to do. Again, whether you like it or not, there is no wrong answer. But, I do think it makes the experience better if we engage with it fairly. I've seen a lot of criticism where, people try to ascribe certain feelings or certain attitudes to the filmmakers. Like, oh, J.J. Abrams was trying to, retcon A New Hope with The Rise of Skywalker, or Rian Johnson was trying to stick a finger in the eye of everybody who was theorizing about The Force Awakens. Like, maybe, but you don't know that, that doesn't help you in, like, that just is a self-fulfilling prophecy to make you angry.
Exactly. Yeah. All it is hearsay that just is just pissing yourself off. It's not doing yourself any favors. If you come at something like with a respectful, fun conversation, that's a whole different animal where, you meet the movie where it's at. You meet the characters where they're at. Obviously, like you said, I get why Mark Hamill of all people would be upset, but from an audience perspective, we want our expectations to be subverted, and we don't want the whole movie to be about Luke. We want to learn more about Rey. It's just, it's such an interesting approach. I almost want to play a little game real quick. Simplest game in the world.
I love games.
I don't know if it might be controversial here.
Okay.
But a good, the bad, and the ugly with the sequel trilogy. If you had to choose a good, bad, and the ugly, and not bad in like actual relative bad, like relative terms for that.
Are we talking just the films, or are we talking things in the films?
For, I guess, let's go good, bad, and ugly based upon the most Star Wars-y as each one is. Which one feels the most like a Star Wars film to you?
All right, this one might be controversial. I'm gonna say the most Star Wars-y film, The Rise of Skywalker.
I'm with you.
Okay, because you got capers on different planets. You got a big space battle. You got rebels in the woods. Like it felt very Star Wars-y to me.
Mm-hmm.
For the bad, and again, I'm using this term very lightly. I will maybe put, which again, it's a film that I love, but I'd put The Force Awakens in there because in that one, just because I understand why people feel like, I understand why it was a retread of A New Hope. I mean, I think part of it was that thing where it's like poetry, they rhyme. But I think another part of it was like a clear message to fans who had grown up with the prequels, the Clone Wars, that like, this is the Star Wars you're getting. You're getting this kind of Star Wars. It's not the visual aesthetic of the prequels. It's not the complex relationships and political and philosophical questions. This is, you got your bad guys, you got your good guys, and they're going on an adventure. There's a big thing that blows up planets, and we got to blow that up first. Like it was very much a reset. So I would put that. I would put that then as ugly, because it's a thing that made people dismiss what the film was trying to do, because they're like, oh, it's just a retread of A New Hope. And I think that sort of limited the way people approached the entire trilogy, because some people were like, they wrote it off because they thought it was going to be just this repetitive kind of Disney money grab. And then there were others who went into it thinking like, all right, we're going to get those old movies again, just with new people. And then The Last Jedi came along, which is why that would then end up in bad, because it then does exactly what Empire did, and kind of what Attack of the Clones did, which is take this thing you think is the story and flip it on its head.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's how I would rank them. Okay. Where are you at with the bad and the ugly?
Right there with you on the first thought. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel pretty similar in a lot of ways there. But I think I would keep Force Awakens as the bad one.
Okay.
Just because it sets everything else up for failure in a lot of ways. And I don't necessarily feel like the Star Wars aspects of it are extremely simple. And I do feel like the mystery box aspect of the J.J. Abramism of it, I guess, just kind of lost itself in its sauce just a bit, you know? It's SciTrek people, y'all don't crucify me, but it's the one time the kiss rule does not work. I think J.J. Abrams kept it a little too simple, stupid, and just retreaded just a little too much. He had some really interesting things in there. If we would have gotten Rey just a little bit more Obi-Wan kind of oriented, I think that could have had some really cool stuff there. But also, Maz Kanata is my biggest upset from that entire movie, and that's why I kind of think it's bad in a sense. I would have to rate it the bad out of the three, I guess. Now, I wouldn't call it truly bad because it's still a really good popcorn flick in a lot of ways, but
yeah,
it doesn't. The things that it does introduce that are super interesting it drops the ball within its own movie and doesn't ever like even leave a good thread for them to be opened back up, which Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams himself didn't open back up at the end, you know, or did in a very minuscule kind of way.
Well, let's return to that later in the conversation because I have some questions about that.
Yeah, that's always a good one. But I think Last Jedi is the ugly one out of the bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, it does kind of what Attack of the Clones does. It does kind of what Empire does, and it does exactly what Rian Johnson wanted to do. It does subvert those expectations and flip itself on its head, but also it doesn't know what to do with some of the threads that JJ left, and those still need to be addressed. And it doesn't necessarily address those, but it still has its own voice, and it knows what it wants to say, and it still accomplishes that. So I just think it's kind of like the ugly duckling of the bunch, if it had to get that, you know. But like Rise of Skywalker, it's Frankenstein, and it's a fairly well Frankenstein together movie. You can tell there's a lot of moving pieces there and a lot of different ideas. I wish we could have seen Colin Trevorrow's Duel of the Fates, but that's
I actually just tweeted today because I learned a new thing about it. Everything I learned about that movie, I am so glad we didn't get it.
Really?
I don't think he understood Star Wars in the way that people say J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson don't understand Star Wars. I think the evidence is there that Colin Trevorrow doesn't. I mean, the key point that I will just sort of point to is the way that the film ends, according to what we've read online, where he basically tries to make it canon, that concept of the gray Jedi, which is a misunderstanding of balance that has existed since the first time we've heard the term balance in the Force. Now, I admit Lucas was not exactly clear when he called balance the light side with no dark. But when you hear what he means by that and what that means, you know, if the Force philosophy sort of speaks to you, then it makes perfect sense that it's not like, you know, that oh, well, you know, being compassionate and good and selfless, but a little bit evil and a little bit selfish is good. Like I don't think that is a good message narratively. I don't think it's a good message for kids, and I don't think it makes sense in any other way than like a video game character. Like, oh, you have a video game character. You want, you know, we mentioned KOTOR offline. You know, sometimes you have your light side Revan or your light side Exile. Make the dark side choice just for fun. Like, that's fun. You know, Star Killer. He's a little bad. He's a little good. But
depends on
that's
the day.
good for that's good for games. But like these stories, and I think what, you know, especially if we want to ground them in what George Lucas wanted these things to be. You know, I think that the idea of, you know, where Rey was like, oh, I'm going to use the dark side and the light side together. I mean, that's just video game shit, man. That is not the kind of narrative resolution or thematic resolution that we get in Rise of Skywalker. Whereas in the Rise of Skywalker, we get, you know, the Jedi uses the Force only for defense, never for attack. Rey just blocks the lightning. Palpatine destroys himself. And then sort of the idea that Star Wars is like every institution that exists will eventually fail the people it's meant to serve. But good people, will help you out and fight for the right thing if you give them a reason to. And that's what we get in the People's Fleet. You know, again, I understand everyone's complaints about it, but I think thematically, the where Rise of Skywalker at least tried to end up is where, you know, is at least in keeping with the arc that Lucas started with the first two trilogies.
I'm with you on that.
And then I heard from the Duel of the Fates, apparently R2 gets killed. Go to hell, Colin Trevorrow. No, Colin Trevorrow was great. Jurassic World rules, but I'm just glad he did not make the last Star Wars movie.
Well, even though, like, okay, well, I like the script for Duel of the Fates a lot, and I am kind of a fan of the concept of the Gray Jedi, not in the actual sense of what Lucas embodied, but I feel like people or was trying to embody with the Jedi and the Sith, so on and so forth. But I feel like they're a good place that meets the thought of a Jedi or the inkling of what a Jedi would be to an average person. I feel like a gray Jedi is someone on a journey of self-discovery where they call themselves that and they think themselves that and eventually realize they can't be that and have to go one way or another. I feel like that's just a good a good gray Jedi to me is someone on a journey, just trying to figure that out, which you can have on either side. But that I think leaves room for anti-hero things. But like with the Rey stuff in Rise of Skywalker, you can't use, I think, the dark side without consequences. And same thing with a more focused dark side user trying to use the light side. Maybe those consequences aren't the same as, oh, now you're doing some bad things, but now you're actually understanding what you're doing might not be a really good thing, and it starts to make you think a little bit more. I think there's room for that, but like you said, and it's always a good point to bring back up, Star Wars is made for 12-year-old boys, is Lucas's quote. So you don't necessarily want to overcomplicate that.
Well, I'd throw 12-year-old girls in there too, because
totally,
they're the reason I saw Star Wars is because my mom liked Star Wars, and she was a 27, 28-year-old girl at the time.
I was reading, I think the first technical, like official cosplayer for Star Wars was a girl that made a Halloween costume. She kept going back and forth to the movie theater, had a little flashlight, and actually like copied and sketched the Rebel pilot costume and made it for herself for Halloween.
I have heard that story,
the first official, I guess, cosplayer. I think I read that sometime this past week, maybe two. It runs together sometimes. But
well, Harris, if you would allow me to do a little bit of self-promotion. I recently wrote on CBR an article about how, sci-fi, meaning mostly Star Wars and Star Trek, often overlooks its most important audience, and that is women. I mean, I know we're not talking Star Trek, but if you go into the history of Star Trek, the reason it still exists, the reason conventions happen, the reason there were fanzines and fan fiction is largely because of the women, the women in the audience at the time. And the same with Star Wars. There were, I don't know so much about the Star Wars fanzines, but I do remember this one thing I saw, which made the rounds during The Last Jedi to just prove that Star Wars fans are always the same. It was an editorial from this woman who was ending her fanzine after A New Hope because she did not like how much of a downer Empire Strikes Back was, and that she was just going to like A New Hope, and all you who wanted to read like Empire Strikes Back, read the other fanzines. But again, I think I'm, my view of my mother being my entryway into the world of geekiness. She took me not so much just because she's like, oh, the kid will like this. It's because, Harrison Ford's handsome and she enjoys space wizards and laser swords and all that. So
it's teaching good lessons. It's just badass and fun. It's kind of perfect.
Yeah. So I actually noticed in the chat there, Secular Monk. Hi everybody. Well, first of all, I'm glad Sarah Euler, is that how you pronounce that name?
Yes, it is. She's one of our mini hosts on SciTrek. She's the wonderful.
Nice. Pleasure to meet you, Sarah, and I'm glad you agree because women rule in this fandom, and I will hear nothing else. But no, the Secular Monk says that in the case of Andor, Star Wars is made for someone else. And I don't know if that's exactly, I don't know if he's exactly getting at what I'm about to say, but Andor is the first Star Wars that we've ever gotten that was for adults. Like,
yes.
And you were talking about Grey Jedi, and what Grey Jedi brings to Star Wars is moral ambiguity. Like, that's sort of the hard part when you have Force philosophy is light side is good, dark side is bad. You can make the light side choice at any time. You can make a dark side choice. You can go back and forth, but there's really no ambiguity. Whereas Andor, the political message, which is usually the subtext of like the Lucasfilms and the Clone Wars, is made explicit, and the Force philosophy is just, it's sort of in the background because no one knows the Force. And you talk about a Grey Jedi. I think the best Grey Jedi we have in the canon is Luthen Rael.
Yes, I was hoping you'd say that.
Yeah, because he is. I mean, my God, that monologue. I've made my mind a sunless place. I condemn to use the tools of my enemy to fight
Future
them.
I'll never see.
Yeah, yeah. He is making the selfless choice. He is doing the light side action, but he's given up different rebel cells to protect his source. He's doing things that are not light side actions in the service of like a light side cause. I mean, and that again, while I don't think that would work for me if it was like a Jedi aware of the Force, um, that's where you can get that kind of storytelling. Like that's what Andor does best, is show that like there's these heroes, but they don't quite do heroic stuff all the time. One of my favorite lines. Now, one of my favorite original trilogy characters, I thought was cooler than Boba Fett, even as a kid, was Mon Mothma, because she had like a Jedi type robe. And when Carolyn Blakiston, I think was the actor's name, when she said many Bothans died, like that I hooked my imagination. I was like, what's a Bothan? Where'd you come from? Like I'm
Little dog people. So cool.
Yeah. So happy that Mon Mothma showed up in Andor. And I love that moment at the wedding when Luthen, and spoilers for Andor season 2, by the way, I'll try to keep it vague. There's a character who Mon Mothma cares about who's maybe going to be a problem. And Luthen is going to handle that problem in the way a Grey Jedi type character would. And I forget exactly what Mon Mothma says, but she's like, I don't know what you mean. And he's like, how nice for you.
Yeah.
Because she gets to be about the cause and about the purity of it, whereas Luthen's got to live in the muck. But without him, Luke doesn't blow up the Death Star. There's
apart.
nowhere for Luke, Leia, and Han to go after they are vital to it. So
I think that's where I stopped in Andor season 2 before the whole moving process started, and I'm so desperate to watch those last 9 episodes. Sarah and I, speaking of Sarah, real quick, we talk about Farscape once a week, and we have a Stargate podcast as well. So we're always talking about different things.
I haven't watched Farscape in a long time, but I adored Farscape. Like,
this is the first time I've ever seen it. It is fun.
It's so wild. Like, I mean, anything that like Jim Henson tangential, I'll pick it up.
Dark Crystal too, just the best.
Dark Crystal, and Labyrinth had a chokehold on my imagination.
I will never forgive Netflix. Never forgive Netflix for canceling Age of Resistance.
I'm with you, but they didn't owe us Age of Resistance in the first place. Like, there is a part of me that's just glad we got more. I mean, and I'm with you, because first of all, we could do a whole 2 hours on how these streaming companies have no idea what they're doing. Like, they have no clue.
Just on the Star Wars aspect of that too, before even jumping into everything else. Yeah.
Well, I mean, now this is not related to sci-fi at all, but as part of my beat covering TV, I don't know if you guys are aware of what was called the Suits effect, but Suits was this lawyer show that was on USA. I think it ran for like 7, 8, maybe 9 seasons. Hit Netflix, was in the top streaming charts for weeks. And so NBC, who owns the rights to it, was like, oh, franchise it. We're going to make a new show, Suits LA. And they premiered it on the network.
The Stephen Amell show.
Stephen Amell is in it, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And they did 10 episodes. And I'll tell you what, Oliver Queen in the new Sue show, NBC failed this city because they canceled it before the season finale. And I'm just going to say, if you have a show that got popular by people who sat down at Netflix to binge watch your show, maybe wait until the finale is done so they can see if, maybe they sit down and stream your show on in Peacock or whatever streaming service. Like, I think they don't know what they're doing. I mean, Andor, ridiculous budget, $650 million for 24 episodes of a TV show. That's crazy.
Insane.
But worth every penny. I mean, not a wait. I mean, look, I'm sure there are people who think it's very slow and think there was plenty of wasted frames and episodes. But for me, like, I loved that we had the time to spend 3 hours on Aldhani. Like, where do you get that kind of time for characters in Star Wars to breathe? As much as I love Rise of Skywalker, when you call it Frankenstein, I think the way I describe that is that there are 2.5 movies in that movie.
Yes.
You know, as much as I love what Rian Johnson did for The Last Jedi, the way that he sort of hurt the next filmmaker is that those 2 movies take place over what, like 2 weeks, maybe a month. And so this next movie has to skip ahead a year and try to fit in all this story. And I think they did a very good. I just rewatched it a couple days ago because I had a bunch of articles to write about it, and I wanted to go in fresh. And every time I watch it, it works better. But there are 2.5 movies in that movie. There is no the only time you get like a quiet character moment where the characters can like breathe is that scene with Poe and Zori Bliss in Kijimi, where she talks about like, oh, I got this captain's medallion. And but if we could get like 4 more scenes like that, I swear to God, people would like that movie more.
And maybe a little more Carrie Russell. Never a bad thing. Especially because the few moments she's there, she can. I don't know if it's just the quality of actress she is or what, but she like you said, calms the movie, slows it down for a bit. You get to breathe. Poe, of all people, Oscar Isaac's so good about just being frantic all the time and running around and doing everything and having that big old bead of sweat just ready, you know? And then you see him find somebody that actually slows him down for a second. It gives the movie a much needed, I guess, break, especially because right after, spoilers, I guess, if y'all never seen Rise of Skywalker, I don't know why you're in this chat if you haven't at this point.
It's
Please
been
go
6
watch
years.
Come back. But right after Chewie bites the bullet, or seemingly so, it just feels like the movie is just on a fast pace. And then it takes until Zori Bliss pops in and C-3PO has his nice memory wipe again.
Quick sidebar, for 10 minutes, I fucking hated that movie when I thought it was real. When I thought it was real, I was like, a pox on all your houses. And I just want to say real quick to Secular Monk, when I said hurt the franchise, I wasn't trying to diss Rian Johnson. Again, I love The Last Jedi. I actually wrote an article a while back on CBR calling The Last Jedi is the best of new Star Wars, which again, in critic terms, best is when I say my favorite, but I can't use the first person. I love what it did. When I said it hurt the next filmmaker, I just meant that like the story pacing. They
didn't set the next filmmaker up for success necessarily. You can always play off of something, but
right, like there is a reason that in both the prequels and the original trilogy, there is time that passes between each episode.
Yeah,
because it gives off-screen room for your imagination to fill in how these characters have changed. But with Force Awakens and Last Jedi picking up, right in like they're basically 2 movies or like 1 movie in a way. There isn't that time for these characters to change much from when we met them in Force Awakens. So for the Rise of Skywalker, it had to include a bunch of scenes to sort of shift like Poe's arc and Finn's arc and Rey a little further along than they would normally a little further along than they would have been had The Last Jedi taken place a year after.
Yes.
That's all I meant. I don't mean that, again, I don't think Rian Johnson heard anything. I don't know. A Secular Monk is now talking about Duel of the Fates. He mustn't have heard my...
I think he popped in right after all that.
Yeah. I am not a fan of Duel of the Fates. So happy it is.
Well, okay.
I'm glad everyone can read it. And if they like it, I'm glad they can imagine that Star Wars film. But for me,
much prefer Finn's arc in Duel of the Fates rather than his lack of an arc in Rise of Skywalker. I think that's the thing that
I got to disagree with you there, Harris. I mean, now
really?
Again, you cannot like Finn's arc. That's fine. And it can. And again, even John Boyega says he didn't think it was. I don't even know how to phrase it, but it wasn't substantial enough of an arc. But there is clearly an arc, because at the end of The Last Jedi, Finn went from wanting to run away to ready to die for the cause. And he starts the Rise of Skywalker, fully in the mix on the rebel mission to get the intelligence. And then he ends by not just becoming co-leader of the resistance with Poe, but discovering that he is an inspiration to a bunch of other stormtroopers. When he's talking to Jannah and he's like, she tells her a little number and he's like, I'm FN 2187. And she's like, she reacted in the way that like, I think almost like Rose did, like he was a celebrity to her. And, in the final battle, Finn has the idea for the ground assault with the cavalry. He takes out the tower. He uses his force power, which, again, it's a cheat that I don't know. I don't understand the choice to not just let him say, hey, I can feel the force. I can sense the force.
I
don't know why it was
that's just easy to hang up on. That's easy to hang up on because all this stuff is so damn good. I mean, in its own ways, conceptually is so damn good.
Yeah, but I think Finn does, again, it is a subtle arc. It is not perhaps as substantial as he wanted. And I understand and agree that John Boyega should have also gotten himself a lightsaber. He should have been like, but I think there is an arc there. You know what I mean? And that's sort of where I get like, where I draw the line. Like, you don't have to like it. In fact, if you don't like it, please tell me why. I would love to know. I'd love to see these movies from other people's perspectives. But to say that he doesn't have an arc, I think is not factually accurate, but I think sort of sells the movie short in a way that is maybe unfair or,
Yeah, because like you just said, he has all these different things that fill the arc out. And, what I mean by that and what I think most people probably do mean is we just wish he had the lightsaber at the end. We wish he would have just said the words. Like, simple as that, especially for the finishing of a trilogy, it just felt like it fell short of what it should have been. Even with the Stormtrooper stuff, those moments are freaking great.
Yeah.
I mean,
Harris, I could do a half hour alone justifying Rey Palpatine to Rey Skywalker and why that's beautiful. But I cannot for the life of me think of a good reason that Finn couldn't say at some point in the movie, whether it's sinking into the quicksand or before he's about to thinks that he's going to get shot with Poe and Chewie, or even, at the very end, when they make it so obvious that he can feel the force, like he feels Rey die, and just let him say it. Just let him actual, like, and I think in representational terms a lot too.
Yeah.
Because my son's biracial, and I, being a white guy, all my heroes kind of look like me, and I never thought of that. And I wonder, like, I feel like there are kids who maybe identified with Finn in the same way that I sort of identified with Luke in like, I'm him and he's me. Because, I had, I've never met my father, and like so like Luke was really my guy. And I felt like Luke is the most important fictional hero to me, maybe second to like him and Superman, very close. But I just wish that those kids that, look to Finn that way would have gotten to hear him say, I can sense the force. I want to be a Jedi or something like that. I can't understand that choice. That it makes no sense to me.
I think part of that also, I told you we have a cheeky
secular
audience.
monk with Broom Kid. Yeah,
we got a cheeky audience. I told you.
We're all Broom Kid.
Right. Viva Broom Kid forever, man.
Why were people mad at Broom Kid? Now, you aren't particularly fond of The Last Jedi, right, Harris?
Well, I think it's my actual favorite film.
Oh, you just didn't like the Luke
film-wise.
Okay.
I just wish we would have gotten. I wish we would have seen Luke at his height before we knocked him to his knees. Not necessarily at his height, but some remnants of, instead of a little bit of, oh yeah, he had a Jedi temple at one point, and the only thing that we're going to show you is him almost his nephew real quick. And all right, well, show me how it worked. Show me what he was doing. Show me who he inspired. I want to see that is what I wanted to see, and that was kind of. I can't fault Rian Johnson for the movie he made because I actually really like the movie. Like I said multiple times, just with Luke and Leia, I just wanted just a little bit more, and especially now. And we'll get into Mandalorian, how Mandalorian and everything like that is kind of doing what Attack of the Clones did, or excuse me, the Clone Wars did for Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, for the sequel.
For bad Star Wars is just more Star Wars.
Yeah, like if they planned that, and I guess they didn't, of course, or they didn't plan it as much as we would have liked. Is probably the easy way to say that. If there was an Ahsoka at his temple, I would have just loved. I know we don't need a cameo galore or anything like that in the sequel movies, but just a little something, just a hint of this was going on. Maybe even a fun little plot point that leaves somebody alive somewhere else, just to have some theorization going. But so on and so forth. There, the thing with Finn that not upset me, but makes me roll my eyes. And of course, I like, again, I'm a white dude. Hi, surprise, but it felt like they just, like, Disney just catered to China in that sense, and just them not wanting to do that. And it, well,
I mean,
I don't,
you know what? I'll be honest. That is an argument that I just, I don't. Even though I used to be a political reporter, the China beat was never really my beat, so I don't think I know enough to really weigh in yay or nay. I do think that is a very, I think it's something worth considering about the decision there. And that is something, because looking at box office stuff today without China, your Marvel movies that were 600, 800 million dollars, they're 300, maybe 4 if they're lucky.
Cut that in half, just about.
Yeah.
You have to cater to the second largest film market on the globe.
Yeah.
As somebody who wants to make film, that it might be a hot take, but I still want my films to come out in China one day if I get to make them. That being said, I'd like the film I'd like to make come out in China, and that's
again, not I don't know much about what it's like.
I don't want to dive too far, but like the nuance.
But I'm just saying, a story like Star Wars about the being compassionate, being selfless, anti-authoritarian. Yeah, maybe let that get into China. I'm sure that might help. Again, like I said, I don't know enough about the geopolitical situation to really speak intelligently on it, but
I don't want to dive too far into that, but that's why I was like kind of like holding off on it just for a second. It's just like it one way or another, it's a bit of a head scratcher. And if that was the case, come on, y'all. But if it's not the case, also Disney, come on, y'all. Like we one way or another, it's a come on, y'all, and it's not necessarily directed at either party or whatever, Disney or China or whatever, whatever different market it is in, because there are a lot of different markets that some places in the world. You know what? I don't think the Vatican City, if they have a movie theater, I bet you they're very stringent on what they show. I'm sure a lot of different places in the world have very specific things. It's just such a large market that you tend to have to cater to. Add some nuance to the conversation. That does take it in a whole different area sometimes.
Well, to circle back to Luke thing, I see our friend Secular Monk again talks about Luke's arc is realistic, and he says, as someone who is an educator, it really hit with me. And I again, I'm not an educator, but I'm old and I'm a dad, and I think that's maybe why I was okay with not getting the badass Luke I've dreamed about my whole life, because I've dreamed about that Luke my whole life. I think J.J. Abrams was afraid of Luke. Like, I think he was just too precious about it. I think he was afraid to tackle that character in a meaningful way, like, and to really put him in the story as a superhero or as the way Rian Johnson did. And I think that, and the one thing that I really respect that Johnson did was that he to put it in context. So in the 80s, growing up, anyone who's of the OT generation will remember, is that in the 70s and the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, your hero at the end of the movie, he killed the bad guy. That's winning, is you killed the bad guy. And when Luke throws the lightsaber away and won't kill Darth Vader, it was revolutionary. I mean, that people didn't like it. People are like, what, this wimp? You know what I mean? Like, they did not like that choice at all. But again, I was a kid. It really hit with me. You know what I mean? Like, it worked. Lucas got it in my head that like, oh, maybe the most violent, maybe the most violent thing to killing the guy, maybe that's not the best way to defeat the bad guy. Like that, that sort of, it was not what I was expecting. And again, I was 3. I don't remember. It's not like I was watching Rambo and other movies, but now that I can look at it in context, I'm sure there are people for whom that really stood out. It was the heroic ending that they weren't expecting. And I think that's what Rian Johnson was trying to do with The Last Jedi, is give us Luke, who is a hero, but just in a way that we're not expecting. Like, he is a hero that made a mistake, and he's being really hard on himself because of it. And he is blaming himself. He's blaming the entire concept, of the Jedi, tying in the theme of the prequels, that the Jedi Order was too rigid and dogmatic, ignoring the Force for its rules. And then through the younger generation, through this student who wouldn't take no for an answer and who had the idealism that Luke lost, he found it again, connected to his sister through the Force. And say what you will, but the crate, his thing on crate, that is the most light side Jedi thing ever. I mean, he made no offensive moves. And not only did the Resistance survive, everybody in the First Order lived. Nobody died after he showed up. Everybody got away. Everybody got to live again. I mean, that is, again, if we take what Yoda said in Empire Strikes Back about what a Jedi, what the light side is supposed to be, you don't get any more perfect than Luke. And I think that builds on the throwing the lightsaber away. In The Mandalorian, we got our hallway scene with him chopping up droids with the lightsaber and crushing them up. Like, look, I loved it too. I was like, yay! But for the saga films and as a thematic work, Crate, it builds on what The Last Jedi started, and that is the hero that Luke is. We had our toys. He did his superheroes. He chopped up the bad guys, and that's fine. He can live in our headcanon that way. But in the movies, with Luke, I think that's the hero. Like Rian Johnson was trying to do what Lucas did in Return of the Jedi, is show us the hero that we didn't know was a hero or didn't know we needed. So, I mean, that's just how I read it. And like I said, as an older guy who, I've got my successes, my failures, like Secular Monk, I relate to Luke in The Last Jedi in a way that I don't think I would have if I was your age or even a kid.
Well, that makes sense. Like Luke, I honestly, because again, kind of like Finn, there's just that one little hold up at the end, like just say the words, dude, just say the words. If Luke would have force projected himself, and not passed away right after, not sacrificed himself in that sense, and maybe in a different sense, I feel like the approach would have been the fan approach would have been better, I guess.
Harris, do not mourn for those who become one with the Force.
This is true.
I mean, that, again, I think that is what Johnson is getting at. Now, we want to talk about hangups that I've had my entire life. How is Obi-Wan more powerful than we can imagine? I can imagine a lot of power. And I mean, we kind of get it with Yoda and the lightning and the Force Ghost thing. I think the sequel trilogy did Force Ghost better than the original trilogy. There's a new hot take that I just came up with right now.
Well, I might agree with you.
I never understood why Ben was like, I'll be more powerful. It's like, well, you'll show up and you'll hem and haw about well, from a certain point of view, I didn't lie to you.
That's almost, I feel like, Force Ghosts, as we explore them more, are kind of powerful in some degrees, of course.
Oh, sure.
Especially old Luke and Rise of Skywalker. That's a great scene. That's one of the greatest scenes I think Disney's given us in any of their Star Wars, honestly.
Can I make a point of what's the term? It's not parliamentary inquiry. Just a real point, real quick. Like, can we just accept and state that when Luke says the Jedi weapon deserves more respect, he's making a joke about himself. It is not J.J. Abrams saying "F you, Rian Johnson." That is a thing that I hear all the time. It makes me nuts because I actually, to again further promote myself, in both Divided Allegiance, the third waves of Star Wars and Star Trek, now available on Amazon in paperback, and a recent article for CBR, I wrote extensively about how the Rise of Skywalker only works as a story if you accept that it builds on everything the Last Jedi introduces. It doesn't retcon it, doesn't walk it back. And that Force Ghost scene, like Luke is making a joke about himself, and the reason Luke is so different, he's not, it's not JJ saying like this is how Luke should be. Luke is Yoda now. As a Force Ghost in Last Jedi, Yoda's sillier than we ever saw him. Like even when he was doing his little tricks with R2 and getting the snacks, he wasn't as silly as that Yoda. Somehow about, becoming one with the Force, he has a perspective or an awareness and of what's important, and it amuses him. It's not, he's not worried, he's not ashamed, he's not like, he's not like we must do this. He is amused. There's a joy to it. And, with Luke, the respect the Jedi weapon in his very next line is, what are you doing? Like he is that version of Luke, the silly, it's kind of emulating the way Yoda was. And that's why his Force Ghost is who Rey needs to talk to in that moment. Just as Luke at his lowest point, when he's ready to give up. I mean, and I don't know, I don't remember where I heard this, but Rian Johnson said he never like made it explicit, but he wanted the implication to be that after Luke destroys the tree, he was going to punch his own ticket. Like he was that low. And so he talked to Yoda at his lowest point when he needed him the most. And Luke shows up for Rey at her lowest point when she needs him the most. And from that conversation, they both go off to do the important thing that saves the day.
Yeah. Well, that's poetry. It's almost like it rhymes. And it does so well. Yeah. Because I love Luke's Force Ghost in Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I think the little hang up just of him dying at the end, but also like he says the perfect line to make you not want to, and to give you a little precursor for it. It's just, again, you want the movie to be 30 minutes longer too, and you want a whole nother half a dozen plot lines in there, and I think that's that kind of like that kind of.
I'd have taken 6 more movies, frankly. They could have just kept going.
Oh, come on,
Real
please.
time is through the whole war against the First Order. I don't care. I mean, that's the other thing that, like, if we want to talk about things that maybe Lucasfilm has disappointed us with, you brought up earlier in the chat about how the Clone Wars informed the prequels in a way that was vital and changed like people's opinions about them. People who thought less of them watched the Clone Wars and were like, oh, I get the prequels now. Whether it's this new movie that they're trying to do or an animated series like the Clone Wars, why are they not doing that for the sequel era? Why are we not getting the year or two between Last Jedi and
Did you watch Star Wars Resistance at all?
I did, and
it does that very minimally. Minimally.
Well, what's interesting, I think, that Star Wars Resistance does, especially with the way the first season ended into the second season, because the second season was the final season, right?
Yes, and I really like the second season. The first season's all right, but I really like.
I mean, it's very much like it. Other than like Young Jedi Adventures, it is the most kid-focused.
Oh yeah.
Star Wars thing. Like everyone who's funny and cool in that show is funny and cool to kids younger than perhaps 12.
Very much so.
And I think the one thing it did that was interesting was sort of it contextualized why no one shows up until Lando and Chewie goes out and rallies the prequel fleet. They are just trying to survive, and they are sort of, I mean, I don't want to say scared, but they aren't trying to get into a war with the First Order. They're trying to just keep their head down. It does inform the sequel trilogy, but just not in the way the Clone Wars does, I don't think.
No, it does it from an external point of view instead of that internal point of view that we got with the Clone Wars. And honestly, have you watched Tales of the Jedi?
Yes.
That is a perfect smaller version of Clone Wars, of course, but that it does a very similar thing for Phantom Menace into Attack of the Clones. And
we got a Yaddle story. We got Yaddle.
We had
I mean,
more.
come on, Star Wars fans. Like, I'm just saying, if you can't have fun with Yaddle fighting Count Dooku, if you can't have fun with a Wookiee Jedi, if you can't have
Oh,
fun with, you know, sick lightsaber fights, I don't think that's Star Wars' fault. Like, you don't have to like everything, but there is stuff that you can be like, all right, that's cool, that's fun.
it depends on that lens we try to view it with, and it's an interesting thing with, of course, Andor coming out now. What lens are we viewing things with? And I think that's going to be something I think the whole fan base in these conversations will continue to talk about over the next couple of years, especially as Mando and Grogu comes out and they kind of pivot back towards the filmmaking aspect of Star Wars. And it seems like Ahsoka is really going to be that final stand on the TV route.
Kind of does. I mean, Ahsoka's the only one that's in production, and unless Kathleen Kennedy is able to wrangle some money out of Mickey Mouse's pockets for another streaming show, I don't think Lando's happening. I don't think, I don't think we're gonna get many more live action streaming because of this shift to the film, the feature films, which again is something I also kind of question, because the box offices are not like back to pre-pandemic levels yet. I don't know what money they think they're leaving on the table by not putting out a film. I mean, the Rise of Skywalker and the sequel films, they made $1 billion because they had Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford. Well, Carrie Fisher in the last one in a very interesting way, but I actually think that was kind of tastefully done. It's better than Tarkin in Rogue One. I love Rogue One. It's better than Tarkin in Rogue One.
I do agree with there. I thought she was well handled. I wouldn't mind Billy Lord coming back and doing a little bit more.
I think Billy Lord would pull it off. I have a friend who says he thinks that would probably be weird for her to like step into her mother's role.
I can see that,
maybe, but I don't know. I think she'd pull it off, and if not, I think that the one thing Andor showed us with Benjamin Bratt stepping in for Jimmy Smits, you can recast. You can absolutely recast. Jimmy Smits is still a great Bail Andor or Bail Organa, but Benjamin Bratt, he did the job.
I think because I love Benjamin Bratt.
Yeah,
like everything he's ever in is damn good, so damn good.
Yeah.
But I love Jimmy Smits too. Yeah, I've seen Jimmy Smits since I was a little kid. I was raised with Jimmy Smits as Bail Organa. I haven't watched the 4th episode of Andor yet, and part of that was obviously moving around and having all this go on.
Yeah.
Part of that, I saw the recast, and I'm like, I'm sure it'll be great. It just hurts my soul. I want my Sons of Anarchy, Dexter, Star Wars man doing Star Wars.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that Tony Gilroy said that Jimmy Smits just wasn't available. When they were shooting, it was either recast or not have Bail Organa. And I mean, with Tony Gilroy, if there's a legacy character in that story, he needs that legacy character. He is not going to give you Glup Shido walking through, no matter how much you ask him to.
As much as I would enjoy it.
Yeah, I strongly believed that Ahsoka as the fulcrum agent, even if it's just like a hoodie thing or like part of the spy network, I thought that should have been part of the show. I will not tell you whether it was or wasn't, but don't get your hopes up. But the choices that are made in Andor, they really are. They are germane to the story, and they I think do the job that Tony Gilroy wanted to do. And what I find very interesting is that, Andor gets a lot of the benefit of the doubt that other Star Wars projects don't. Now, I think that's because it is the most adult one. So people, it feels different to them, I think. But, I know that, people would say that the Luke at the end of Mando 2 was fan service and nostalgia. And, I remember thinking, is it going to be Ezra? Is it going to be Cal Kestis? Who's the Jedi going to show up? Because I didn't think that they would have Luke Skywalker there.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a secular monk. We should just cast Sebastian Stan as Luke. Let's just recast.
I love Max Lloyd Jones, but Sebastian Stan, perfect.
Hell, the guy they got to stand in for Luke
Max
in
Lloyd
the
Jones,
behind the
he's great.
scenes. Yeah, he like, what did the deep fake do? He kind of looks like Luke already. But if you think about that moment, who else is going to show up if you called for a Jedi to train a Jedi at that time of the story? Like, Luke Skywalker makes sense, but there are people who think that just because, Rebels characters show up in the Rebellion, or what's left of the Rebellion in the New Republic in Ahsoka, like, oh, that's fan service and Dave Filoni shoving his action figures in your face. It's like, well, maybe, or maybe, there is no character who shows up that hurts the show.
No.
I mean, you could maybe argue that, like, Zeb didn't have to be Zeb in Mando season 3. It could have been any old pilot. But it also could be Zeb.
It was so much. They don't make a big deal of it like that, which is nice.
Yeah.
When they do kind of like sit on the cameo, and it's you know what? The only 2 cameos that I didn't love.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, let's play this game. What is the most fan servicey cameo, and what is the most, like, oh yeah, this is exactly what it's supposed to be cameo?
Ooh, the most fan servicey,
yeah,
which is dumb, and it will always be dumb to me, was Lizzo and Jack Black, because it's not even like a fan service within like Star Wars.
I mean, but they're just actors. They're just actors. Like, they
focused on them being them in that episode, and like, I get you got Jack Black and Lizzo, play around with it, but it wasn't like a fun playing around with Star Wars. It kind of made me roll my eyes in the same way Minecraft has been doing the last couple of weeks.
Well, you know what? Look, while I may not share your feeling about Jack Black and Lizzo in that scene, because again, I think it's just that we're like, oh, it's Jack Black and Lizzo, and we're usually not used to seeing people we recognize in Star Wars. Like, that is one thing that, like, the people who are in Star Wars are the people who are in Star Wars for most people. Like, a handful of Trainspotting fans saw the Phantom Menace, so we're like, oh, he's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, he's Obi-Wan Kenobi now. But I'm with you. Minecraft, it was about 35% too much Jack Black being Jack Black.
Like, he's like, I don't want to be mad at Jack Black.
I hope there are kids who love that movie, because I did not.
I wasn't a big Minecraft person ever either. It's never been like one of my big things, and
my kid and I played it a bunch. All the charm of that movie is being like, oh, that thing. Oh, there's that thing.
That might have been why it really didn't. It hasn't sat super well, and also I'll get hung up on the lack of plot lines or arcs in that movie, and that way I will. That one did have some lack of arcs right there.
Don't look at me to defend that one.
But I think the thing about Jack Black and Lizzo that stands out even more to me about that, and just doesn't make it work, is just how damn well Christopher Lloyd fits into that same episode and just does it seamlessly. And it's Christopher Lloyd. It's Christopher freaking Lloyd. But he's a character in that world. Where I get that Jack Black and Lizzo are like the king and queen of the little planet there, but it just takes me out of it nonetheless.
You know what? I wasn't with you, but then when I literally just watched that episode. Maybe
if he wasn't in the same episode, I would.
But no, you're right. He's Christopher Lloyd. He is Christopher Lloyd, and he is not. It is not the same as Jack Black and Lizzo. I am sort of fine with that, especially with the characters they're supposed to be playing. There's these like. But you know what? That's fair. What I meant by cameo is like a character showing up that, like, you're like, why is this character here?
I knew. I just at the second fan service he popped in my head. I was like, those two just I can't just haven't figured it out yet. I'm trying to get over it. Not really, but it's just I always think about it, say what you will, my students love Minecraft. Close to $1 billion freaking real quick.
Oh, so it did really well. Okay, that's.
Oh yeah. Hey, but Lilo and Stitch is blowing it out of the water now.
Who saw that coming?
Please. July is going to have a whole bunch of movies. Please do some good. Talk about Trevorrow. We got some more Jurassic coming this way.
I'm all in for dinosaurs.
Rebirth.
All the dinosaurs he wants. I'm interested in that one. I love that they're trying a new Jurassic Park thing. Especially because it was a fun movie, but that last Jurassic World, that started to feel like a little too complex. You talk about it like
that might have been a little Frankenstein.
Yeah. Well, I just want to tell. The reason I asked that question is I want to tell you what I think is the most fan servicey cameo,
Please.
And I think this might be controversial because we all love it. Obi-Wan and Rebels. There is no need for Ezra to go to Tatooine, for Obi-Wan to show up, even with Maul. Like, because the thing is, everyone thought that, like, especially with Obi-Wan's show coming, they're like, oh, he'll face Maul. That's where that should happen. Now, at the time, they weren't going to make an Obi-Wan thing. And I guess Dave Filoni's like, this is where it's going to happen if it's going to happen. And that is maybe my favorite lightsaber fight. Like, it's in my top 3. But, I mean, think about the story Rebels is telling. The reality of what Obi-Wan Kenobi is doing on Tatooine, hiding out, protecting Luke. He should not be in that show. Like, that is there just because one of the actors could do the voice, and there wasn't going to be the Obi-Wan movie got canceled. And they're like, well, he's got to kill Maul somewhere. I think that's why that exists. Now, I say that just to prove that I think fan service doesn't necessarily mean bad.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, it's good, it's great, but like that, you take that episode out of Rebels, what's different in Rebels?
Not a whole bunch, honestly. I never really thought about it like that. But damn, it's so beautiful. It's such a great scene.
So great. Like, the lights, the details with the lightsaber. Oh, that's the nerdy. Oh, it's exactly what I'm there for.
I mean, it's probably because I'm just a young buck and grew up with Star Wars in the way I did. But Rebels, I think, is my favorite overall Star Wars. A lot of the time, most of the time, I'm with you. It's either Return of the Jedi a lot of the time, or it's between Empire, Rogue One, and Return of the Jedi a lot of the time. Yeah. If I have to pick a movie, but whenever someone just asks, and it's just one of those days, I'm just like, it depends on the day you ask me, of course. But Rebels is probably your most consistent one. Yeah. I just love Rebels. You know what? That would be Rebels is a home run. Fan service wise, I thought Cad Bane and Boba Fett was a little bit. It made sense with what's Timothy Oliphant's character's name?
Oh God.
Monk, help us out.
Oh, what is that guy's? Vanth. Cobb Vanth?
Cobb Vanth, thank you. Oh my God, perfect. I
had to think back to reading the Aftermath books, and I was like seeing the name on the page.
And I'm glad they fricking got Timothy Oliphant of anybody to play him.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I see some blasphemy as an original trilogy generation kid. I kind of didn't care about Boba Fett beyond him just looking cool until the Book of Boba Fett. The Book of Boba Fett made him like a person to me that I was like, oh, he's more than just looking badass, shooting things, flying around. And I understand why people don't like that show. And I understand they made a lot of weird choices in that show. And so I get why people brush up against it. But I think that a lot of the like the Boba Fett stuff sort of works for me. I understand what he wants. Like, he's tired of being a hired hand. He's like, I'm going to run this. I'm going to run it fairly. I'm going to, they've made him honorable, which, I think sort of flies in the face of his Legends characterization. But I kind of thought his Legends characterization, that's kind of why he was boring, because he's always like the shitty guy. And it's like,
that just one note.
Yeah.
Well, but knowing everything we know about clones, it helps to inform the character a bit more.
It does. But I'm with Secular Monk in that, like, Cad Bane showing up, like, he looked just like himself. I can't deny that he looked good. The voice sounded good. But yeah, that could have been anybody. It didn't. You take Cad Bane out, how is it really different?
Yeah.
Cobb isn't shot.
Yeah, at that point, obviously, things have changed a little bit. But Black Chrysanthemum or any other, like, bring Bosk in right there, that might make even more sense. I don't know. There's a couple different things that would make more sense right there.
We got Black Chrysanthemum in live action.
He looks so good too. I want it to be somewhere else other than Boba Fett, just because more people need to see him.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, anytime you can get caught up being mad at Star Wars for all sorts of things. But then there are times where you can just go, even just going, we're still getting Star Wars. It's about to be 50. And we just got a 12-hour series about revolution, the cost of war, a real mature take on things. And then we got, before that, we got, like 6 little cartoons about criminals in the galaxy.
Which were good. I like those. Talking about Cad Bane,
Yeah.
those were good Cad Bane episodes, and good Asajj episodes.
Talk about making me care about a bounty hunter. I was like, oh,
Damn
well,
right.
okay, maybe this guy does have something going on. And I'll be honest, I'm a sucker for Ventress. Give me all the Ventress.
Ventress is the best. I want Eva Green just put herself into a Asajj Ventress suit and just get cast. Just come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
I never would have thought that, like back in watching the Clone Wars movie in 2008, that this character would be one of my favorites. But here we are, 2025, and I'm like, I mean, that book, Dark Disciple. I don't know if you guys read the books, but Dark Disciple is talk about a great Jedi. That
Quinlan and Asajj are two of my favorite. If we're talking like strictly Jedi, I go Plo Koon and Keith Fisto just because they're just so great. But
excellent polls.
Asajj and Quinlan and even just Ventress in general, but Asajj, Quinlan, and even Ezra, I guess, as he kind of teeters with the dark side, and Cal. I think all four of them are really good characters that kind of are fit that little ambiguity just a little bit more.
Oh, I can't believe I forgot Cal when I made that point about it being video game shit, because that is like the perfect example of why
especially
it's
that
video
last
game shit. Like it's a great video game.
Damn.
In episode 9 of the Skywalker saga, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's just like, come on.
But for Cal Kestis and his little betrayal buddy, and yeah. I mean, I struggled. I'm not a gamer. I struggled through those games because I was like, I gotta know what happens. Trying to run on these walls, being bad at it.
See, I can play games, but like you said earlier when you were talking about Mass Effect, that's the game I play. I'm Mass Effect, Skyrim. Give me something, Fallout. Let me explore. Let me have a good time.
Yeah.
I can point and shoot all day, but
the other video game I'll play is Spider-Man, but I rarely do the missions. I just swing around New York until I get bored and then I turn it off.
Sometimes it's nice to put it on a story mode, or just story mode might get a little too slow sometimes, but it's nice to.
I play easiest level. I'm not trying to win any awards. I need the wizard from that 1980s Fred Savage movie for all my old people.
For Minecraft, you're not Jason Momoa, right?
I'm not Jason Momoa. Yes.
There we go.
Oh my God! Wait. So here, all right. My new headcanon now is that Jason Momoa is the kid from The Wizard grown up. I'm gonna like Minecraft now. I'm gonna watch it again, thinking that he's Fred Savage from that movie.
Honestly, that's kind of great. If that's the way to make it, any way to make Minecraft more digestible is necessary.
Secular Monk, you see, he asked about Thrawn.
Ooh.
How do we feel about Thrawn?
I love the meme. I've seen it so many times, and it always just comes to mind. There's Thrawn from the original trilogy of books.
The Heir to the Empire, yes.
4D chess over there. Or 3D chess. The 3-tiered chess games where he has the 3 different levels of chess. Then there's Thrawn in the Disney books. The Disney trilogy of Thrawn. The Aftermath trilogy from Disney, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then it's
is it? No, the Aftermath
trilogy
trilogy
is the original.
Timothy Zahn wrote the 3 Thrawn trilogy books. They are same guy.
And the new one.
Oh, the Chiss. What about when he's in the Ascendancy?
The Chiss Ascendancy. There we go. And the Grisk and all that, because the Grisk instead of the Yuzhan Vong, I guess they kind of switched it up a bit. Those sets of novels in the meme is just a normal chess game, and then there's Thrawn in the Rebels show, and then it shows him playing checkers, and then it shows Thrawn in, I guess, the Mandalorian TV show, or Ahsoka, excuse me, and he's like playing Go Fish or something like that.
Why would he be stupid in Ahsoka? He won. Like he did everything right. Like
he did. It just doesn't, I think, do a good enough job of
I'll be honest.
It sometimes.
Of the, again, in Rebels is a tough one because, if your Star Trek friends were here, they would tell you that it's the Borg in Star Trek. It's like, it's this great villain, but every time he shows up, if he doesn't kill your protagonists, he is now not as great a villain. Right. So, I think he works in Rebels just fine. I think that the Heir to the Empire books, like, I think Thrawn is not. I think he is a character that understand and buy into more in the new canon books. His relationship with the Empire. Now, I'll be honest, I have my, the whole thing about the similarity, anything there where it's like the Force doesn't work on it. I'm like, boo. Because again, Force is created by living things. You can't have a living thing the Force doesn't work on. And you're just doing that. You're doing that because you're like, I need to nerf the Force to tell my story and be more creative. And I didn't like, the clone thing in Heir to the Empire. That was like before we knew what the Clone Wars were. So that never quite clicked for me. I mean, it was cool. All the Rebel shit was cool. And like, he felt overpowered to me in a way. Like I could see the hand of the author in the Heir to the Empire trilogy, where Thrawn is just doing everything right all the time. And I think in the books, especially, and maybe a little bit in Rebels, but less so, he doesn't do everything right. Things go wrong, but he gets out of it.
Yeah.
And that is a more interesting character for me. Like a guy who makes mistakes and gets out of it is more interesting to me than like Thrawn and Heir to the Empire, where he's 3 steps ahead of everybody. And, they're like, aha, we got you. And he's like, but I thought of this, and there's this too. And you're like, oh, so I love Heir to the Empire. That and Dark Empire were all the new Star Wars we got after like 8-9 years. Like it was a desert where we were thirsty in the Dune Sea, like looking like the Krayt Dragon skeleton.
You had the splinter in your mind's eye, and you were just waiting.
Splinter in the mind's eye. Yes, that's forgot about that one. But yeah, Heir to the Empire, Dark Empire, they came out I think 89, 90. And that sort of started the whole wave of the Legends EU, which the other thing that I think is really funny about the way people don't like the sequels is how they feel about the sequels. Like this sort of general tenor of why people don't like the sequels and how they feel about the characters in the sequels is how I felt about the Legend books. Like there was those ones, there was usually more I didn't like in them than I did. Whereas with the new Star Wars we get now, there's more I like than I don't. And again, I don't begrudge anyone the Legends. I bought all the books. I mean, until they killed Chewie, and then I was like, you don't kill Chewie on my watch.
No. So I need a 30-minute expose on why Mara Jade's the best Star Wars character.
If only my colleague Emily O'Donnell I used to write with at another site was here. She loves Mara Jade.
That's good. Are you a fan of Mara Jade?
I could give her take her. I do think she was interesting in the introduction. When she was, what was she, the Hand of the Emperor? What was her title? Yeah. I thought that was interesting. But I also was like, isn't that what Darth Vader did? No besmirching Mara Jade here. That is a perfectly valid character. Did not quite resonate with me. I also kind of did not need Luke to get married and have kids. I never really thought about it, but like the sort of monastic thing about the Jedi, like that tracks for me in a way.
Talking about secular monks, he should have become one.
Secular monks,
would have felt more like it. Speaking of, he said all of my Star Wars friends talk about how menacing and smart he is, or was. I was unimpressed. I've been unimpressed so far. Well, that's kind of one of those things, I guess, that Josh was talking about here is like those books have him. They set him up in an unrealistic thing for a TV show or for a film in a lot of ways, because you have not necessarily more time to write a book or anything, but.
Well, you get to spend time in his presence and like see how he does the thing where he looks at the art and then makes the plan and then knows the thing and then this happens and then what's his name, Saboris, whatever how you pronounce his name, he comes in and messes stuff up. Yeah, it is. The books really have him as that. Like, I mean, the meme is sort of right. He is doing that 3D, like he is playing 3D, 4D chess in those books, but I think like in a way that almost makes it less fun for me because, I was like, oh, they're about to do something. I'm like, oh, we got about 150 pages left. It ain't going to work. And it didn't. You know what I mean? Like I was surprised in the new Thrawn books way more than I was in the first ones. Now, again, I haven't
Okay.
read the ones where he's in the Chiss. It's just the ones where he's in the Empire.
Well,
And him getting the better of Krennic and Tarkin. I love that.
Cool.
That was
and
fun.
that meme cracks me up just because it is funny, and I see why people say that. But Rebels is how I got introduced to Thrawn in general, and as a little kid, that thing blew my mind. And this blue guy going into Star Wars and taking over a stranglehold of it more so than I think anybody besides the Emperor has.
Yeah.
Count me in. Like it was just so interesting to watch, and I do.
And at the time, people lost their minds. They were so hype that Thrawn was coming into canon.
When we were talking about like maybe our favorite scene from Star Wars, or not necessarily our favorite scene, but how like Obi-Wan killing Maul is one of our favorite scenes in a lot of ways. That
again, at
Kanan bites the bullet.
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I have in Divided Allegiance, the third wave of Star Trek and Star Wars, now available on Amazon, where you can buy the link in the description. I write an article about how that moment, the Obi-Wan Maul scene, is like, is one. I really break it down and talk about like why it works so well. I don't even mention the fact that I think that it is purely fan service, because that wasn't what I was talking about. But I do think that I think that it is so well done, and it shows how animation is nowhere, like, you can't even say that it's a lesser form of storytelling.
No,
like
no.
it is, Andor is fantastic. Andor is brilliant. And Tony Gilroy, he talks about the cartoons, meaning Rebels, and that's the way that he set that up too. It works. She made a different speech, and it informs the way news works in the Empire. They don't clash against each other. But I did feel like I caught a little shade in where he was talking about it towards the cartoons, the animated series, as if they are somehow not as valid as Andor. But I would say that if you challenged me to write a Star Wars, I would much rather be able to be explicit about my political message and my philosophical message than have to leave it to subtext in a way that's accessible to children in a half-hour or 22-minute episode. There is skill at play in both. And, in that, 2-minute, 3-minute scene with Obi-Wan and Maul, I mean, that's the Obi-Wan movie. You don't need an Obi-Wan movie. That's it right there.
That scene alone, not alone, I guess that scene alongside Kanan, his final moments, and then Ezra deciding when Ezra tricks Sabine, and we see that kind of process in that kind of final episode, or the second to last episode. Those just that, like you said, I don't care if they're cartoons, because you know what? Technically, they are cartoons.
Yeah,
but that doesn't make animation any less. That makes animation no lesser than what any live action property is. It's just so damn good.
I mean, look, as a veteran that served in Iraq, I have no shame or any qualms in saying that I believe that the Clone Wars series is the best fiction we've gotten to date about the war on terror. I mean, that series, like, when I saw Revenge of the Sith, I was in Iraq. It was the only Star Wars I had not seen in the theater until the re-release was when I finally saw it in the theater for the first time. I don't know if you are aware of this, but right when the movie came out, it was the very beginning of like online downloading and stuff. And a work print copy of Revenge of the Sith leaked online. And when I was in Iraq, the locals would pirate movies, put them on DVDs, and sell them to us. We would get bootleg DVDs. And so I watched Revenge of the Sith in Iraq, and hadn't seen the Clone Wars yet. And you talk about a meme, it was kind of that meme, like, is this play about us? Like, it was very clear, especially over there, like what was going on in that movie. And I mean, I don't know if being there helped with that, or helped that sort of resonate in a way. But by the time the Clone Wars came out, I think everybody understood, like, oh, that's what this is. And I don't think it was an accident. I don't think that George Lucas did that by mistake. I mean, it's historical. There's always these questionable wars, from Vietnam, which inspired Return of the Jedi. The Ewoks weren't teddy bears. They were the guerrilla fighters taking down the military superior empire.
Viet Cong in it, yeah.
I mean, that's another consistent thing about Star Wars. People will overlook. People will sell it short. They will see, and it's happening today with the sequels, with the TV shows. Not Andor, again, because Andor is explicit. So when Andor tells you the manifesto, you're like, I get it. But when Bad Batch season 2 has their prison worker revolution story, you might not catch it right away. But
it's
the
still
stuff is there.
Oh yeah,
so,
that Bad Batch stuff was great. Not all of it necessarily. It wasn't as consistent, but it was still so good. We got the good stuff.
Yeah.
But okay, real quick, because I got about 8 questions that came up off of that. We got to we got to make fun of Jay real quick.
Okay.
Because he refuses to acknowledge that the original trilogy has any correlation with the Vietnam War. And I'm like, there's so much discourse about that. I'm like, come on. But we have fun debates every now and then, and because I'm the Star Wars one, Jay's the Star Trek guy. We had a little Star Wars versus Star Trek debate, and that's always a good conversation because you know who wins? Stargate, of course. But
absolutely,
always 10 times out of 10. But that's always a fun conversation, just because there's just so much nuance hidden within.
Well, Star Wars. It's I've never thought about it this way, but I think I can understand why Jay, as a Star Trek fan, primarily doesn't see the Vietnam War and Return of the Jedi because of how diametrically opposed Star Trek and Star Wars philosophies are. Star Wars is, like I said earlier, Star Wars is about how every institution, every system created by people will fail the people it's designed to serve. Whereas Star Trek is that we can create the perfect system, and when it fails, it's because of some person not living up to these ideals.
It's that utopian almost versus
and they get to the same place, but just from 2 different directions. It's about individual people making good selfless choices to do the right thing, to follow this set of values, whether it's the light side or Starfleet ideals. But with Star Wars, it's the system, the institution that's corrupted. That's why things go bad. With Star Trek, it's some admiral who is a jagoff, who is doing the wrong thing. And then it's up to like the good crew of the Enterprise or the Deep Space Nine to figure out like, hey, this guy isn't doing the right thing. And then they catch him and they turn him into Starfleet. And they're like, this guy's bad. Like, it's never like the rot is all the way through Starfleet. It's always individual people. Whereas Star Wars, the rot is in the Republic. The rot is in the Jedi Order. The rot is in, probably the New Republic. Again, we didn't get much New Republic in The Force Awakens.
No,
the subtext is, but even even the subtext there though is that the New Republic was like a non-presence. They did not. There's the reason that Leia had to be off doing her thing is because the New Republic just ignored the First Order. They didn't care. They were too caught up in their own drama.
They doubled down on we don't want to be the Empire, so we're going to do nothing like the Empire. And hey, talk about a good nuanced topic at times. It's what level of policing should the Republic have on the galaxy? We don't want to overstep because we've been living in an overstep for the past 30 years. And the entire people that have rebelled for the last 30 years, the people that are still alive, I don't think they want a new boot down. It's just kind of playing with that, and it's some good stuff.
There's some of that in Mando season 3 about
that
specific question.
And it's good. Oh, real quick, Monk just brought up a good little thing. Thoughts on Akira Kurosawa's contributions to Star Wars?
Oh, I mean, I don't think it would look very different if George Lucas hadn't fallen in love with those movies. The other thing that I think I didn't know this until I watched the behind the scenes thing from The Rise of Skywalker, but Kijimi is that whole thing is a set that was built. It's not a location. They built that set, and every building has direct correlation to some Kurosawa building, some building in a Kurosawa film. Like the whole thing is a Kurosawa reference.
I wonder if Zori Bliss is also some kind of reference somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know if it went that far. This was like the production design guys. They're like, that's why we did this.
Okay, well, talking about production design and correlative to one franchise to another.
Yeah.
Monk also brings up another good question. Also, thoughts on Dune's contributions to Star Wars. Of course, I was definitely not alluding to giant sandworms and giant sand dunes all over Tatooine. You know,
Look, as someone who loves both the Dune books and Star Wars, I've always felt that it's a little overblown. Like, I think Lucas probably got spice from Dune, and it was probably like an homage, because Lucas is a nerd, man. There's a story I heard from Ron Howard's brother, Clint Howard. He went to audition for A New Hope. I think he was going to play Luke Skywalker. I don't know what role it was for, but I remember him telling the story that he blew the audition because when he walked in, George Lucas lost his mind. He's like, "Oh my God, you're from the Star." I can't remember his character's name. I think it's like Balon or something. He's like, "You're from Star Trek," and he got offended. He's like, "I was a baby when I did that role," and it messed up his audition. But Lucas is a student of sci-fi, so I think he threw some stuff in there as an homage to Dune. But I don't think that the idea that there's a galactic empire. Yeah, Frank Herbert didn't invent that. Deserts are always going to be a stand-in for an alien world because most of us don't live in a desert, and it's an easy way to look alien.
It is one thing I guess he did borrow from Dune there, which makes so much sense. Is Tatooine has been glassed over by not the current empire, but from an empire of far past, and that's why it's all sanded over. And the Tusken Raiders and the Jawas are not supposed to be how they are. That's not how they started out.
You may be going deeper into the lore than I remember. All I remember is that, I maybe stopped reading, but I didn't know that Arrakis was Arrakis turned into a desert. Is that
Arrakis was originally like a beautiful, luscious place, and over time, I don't remember exactly why.
Where do we hear that about Tatooine?
A few different places, most novelizations, but Mando season 3 talks about it a lot. They're starting to compare how Mandalore was glassed, and then when they realized it wasn't glassed in the same way, they're expecting almost that level of destruction, just not aged out yet like that. And the future books as well, of course. But,
how many Dune books are there? Because I think I only ever read like 4 or 5, and there's
973.
I'm not even counting the ones
Brian
the
Hebert
son wrote.
Yeah.
I'm counting just the Frank ones.
In that case, 5 or like 4 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah, I think and again, I read the first 2 are the ones I like. 3's okay.
Oh,
Frank wrote 3. See, I thought there was at least 4 or 5.
Did his son? Okay, or 4. Okay.
Yeah.
He at least wrote the 4, I believe.
Yeah. But I remember I read them probably 20 years ago now. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because I saw Star Wars first that I didn't feel the influence as strongly. I do know that he threw in I forget their names, the characters that make fun of 3PO and R2. There was like these useless prattling characters that were, the description makes them sound it makes it clear that they are supposed to be R2D2 and C3PO, because
that's kind of great. I didn't realize that either.
I mean, I think there might have even been a lawsuit, if
that's
memory serves. I don't know. I might be making that up.
There always ends up being something, That would be Hidden Fortress.
Oh, no. I know the guys in Hidden Fortress inspired R2D2 and C3PO. I'm saying that in one of the Dune books, either Frank Herbert or maybe his son, who was feeling some type of way if he was writing them, put in these characters that everyone believes is a dig at George Lucas. And I remember I think it was called like a 3PO. And he said it's a cheap copy of something good, like something like that. Like it's a real subtle line. Maybe it wasn't a character, maybe it was like an item.
Ooh.
But yeah, it was definitely a dig at Star Wars.
Oh, God. Well, okay. Obviously, we've Star Wars'd it up. And this will still be a Star Wars question.
Okay.
But because we brought up the Frankensteining of things.
Yeah.
What do you think out of these 3 films that I would say have been Frankenstein to some degree or another.
Okay.
Let's do a good, bad, and ugly out of them three. Let's do what we brought up earlier: Jurassic World Dominion.
Sure.
Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
And I know because in your book you do cover a little bit of superhero stuff as well, huh?
I absolutely do. Yes.
How about Spider-Man: No Way Home?
Oh, you made it difficult because I was gonna be like, Star Wars is gonna get good. All right. Well, I'm going to put the Dominion in the bad category, and the reason I'm doing that is because the film wanted to finish the story it started telling with Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard's characters, and then they're like, oh, we need to put in a whole other half a movie to justify having all our favorites in there. And again, love seeing Sam Neill, love seeing Jeff Goldblum, Pittsburgh native, fellow Yinzer. Loved Laura Dern coming back. It was about time. But that one felt like, it feels like you're watching, if not two different stories, it's like Lost when they have the flashbacks. Like, oh, here's the main story, and then here's the other story.
Yeah.
Or
Ugly, even almost Arrow.
Arrow did it for a while too.
Yeah.
For ugly, I am going to put. Damn you, Harris! I'm going to put The Rise of Skywalker in ugly, and that's only because there are expectations of what the final installment of a Star Wars trilogy is supposed to do. And again, because of the unorthodox way the trilogy began, The Rise of Skywalker had a little more narrative work to do up front than normal. And so that gave the film the kind of rush thing. And plus there is this perception, I think an incorrect perception, that Rise of Skywalker is somehow a reaction to or rejection of The Last Jedi. And I think it only works if you see how the story embraces The Last Jedi, which leaves, of course, Spider-Man: No Way Home for the good. And that's just because they really found a way to make it make sense and to make Tom Holland's Peter Parker need to see these other Peter Parkers. I almost put it in the ugly and I'll tell you why, because I also weirdly just rewatched most of No Way Home a week or so ago, and the parts, the pauses they put in for applause, are kind of noticeable now. Like when Charlie Cox puts his cane down, when Andrew Garfield jumps in, and when Toby shows up, and then when they land in certain places, there is a maybe not even a full second pause, but it's they knew people were going to be clapping it up in the theaters. And
you almost need Yelena to pop in and give her a little joke in Black Widow, you're doing the pose thing.
Yeah, it's such a poser.
Just the quick.
But I really love I love how they made that work, because naturally we all knew, if you were if you write about stuff and follow the leaks and stuff, we knew they were all going to be in it. And I was worried it was going to be very ham-fisted, and it it delighted me. I mean, it also helps that Spider-Man is one of my top favorites. You know what I mean?
It never hurts. I just figured out, I guess one of my roommates and I figured out that our other roommate has never seen Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse.
Now,
so we know what we're doing one of these weekends,
I mean, possibly the best Spider-Man movie. And again, by best, I'm meaning favorite, but also in a way I don't know.
It might be the best.
Has he seen a lot of Spider-Man? Has he seen them all?
Oh, all the other things, of course. He literally said, I just haven't seen the animated. He said, I haven't seen the cartoons. And I was like, dude, you're 28. You can't be saying no to cartoons. Especially when we just watched Rick and Morty twice this week already. Come on now.
I feel like, because I wonder how Into the Spider-Verse would play for someone who does not know Spider-Man. You know what I mean? If you were to see that one first and not so that when the scene comes up where Andrew Garfield is there, and you're like, who's this human? Why is Childish Gambino there? I wonder how that would play for people who don't already know the Spider-Man movies.
because they're not informed for the Peter Parker aspect of everything. So almost
Yeah.
would that part of the story fall flat, which is kind of
I
the
think
heart of the story?
I think you could get the idea that like, oh, there was a Spider-Man before.
Mm.
You know, like I think that it does a good job of like establishing who he is. But do you care about him? That's a good
Yeah.
question. Like they might not, like Peter B maybe by the end, you know, but
He might Obi-Wan it up just enough where you're like,
yeah.
yes. But Chris Pine Spider-Man at the beginning, that
Oh man, that was so
it's so
good.
flat.
That was so good.
I love it.
I mean, and look, I love Miles Morales a lot. I remember reading the Ultimate Comics. I would buy them. I was still buying like month to month comics then, and I Ultimate Spider-Man was my jam. I didn't like Ultimate X-Men was like a little too edgy for me. But Ultimate Spider-Man was I loved every choice they made. And then when they spoilers for the Ultimate Universe that is probably 20 years old now, 15. When they kill Peter Parker in that one, I was like, what? And I expected him to come back. It's a comic book, right? Then we got Miles. And I was mad. I was not, and again, I wasn't mad like my Spider-Man's a white guy. No, I just was mad that I was like, I loved this Peter, and they cut his story off before he even got to be like in college or an adult. Like the best part of Peter's story is when he gets out of high school. And then they introduced Miles, and I loved him. It won me over. I mean, Brian Michael Bendis, he really pulled it off. And, I love the way that Into the Spider-Verse has adapted that character. And, I'm curious when he's going to make his debut in live action. I mean, is it this next Spider-Man? I don't know.
Maybe, no, they couldn't do it in the Spider Noir show, but.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's going to be interesting in itself, where it can't be the same Nick Cage as the one from or Spider Noir, excuse me, as the one from the movies, because they have live action Childish Gambino in there.
I think that is supposed to be Nick Cage, though.
Well, no, it is Nick Cage,
okay.
But it has to be like a different, I think, variation of the same character, like a different Spider-Man Noir, because we had.
I'm excited for Spider-Man Noir for lots of reasons, but one of the main reasons is because one of my favorite TV shows that doesn't have star in the title is Sci-Fi's adaptation of the 12 Monkeys. It was created and executive produced by Terry Matalas, who did Picard season 3 and part of season 2. He's doing the Vision Quest show now for Marvel. Right. And the girl who played the Madeline Stowe version of the character from the movie in the TV show, Amanda Shaw. She was also in Suits for a time to keep everything full circle. She is going to be in that Spider Noir show. I don't know if I was allowed to say that. Oh, I've heard a rumor that she might be in that show. I don't know if she is or not. But if she is, then I'm going to be even more excited for that show. But I have no idea one way or another about the facts of that case. Your Honor, this whole court is out of order.
What court? This is a kangaroo court around here. It's the only one we get a hold.
That's what I want to see. I want a Star Wars legal drama. Give me Star Wars courts. We did the Senate. We did, we have a little bit with I want to see Star Wars courts.
We got a little bit of Mando season 3, huh?
We did, and then and a little bit of with Narkina 5 in Andor season 1. Like that was it was a kangaroo court. Just got sent right up, but then there was the prison system. Give me the Star Wars carceral state. That's something that would be very interesting and fits really good into that theme of systems that suck for people.
For the glup shitto aspect of it.
Oh my God, we could have Dengar could be in every week. What Dengar comes in oh man, they got me, and then
even better. Well, if Dengar just popped up as cameo, that would be great.
Yeah,
the character they need to use for that. He learned to swim, and we need Andy Serkis as that character, just for an excuse to have Andy Serkis back. I haven't seen the rest of Andor season 2, so don't let me know if anything does happen there. But I would assume nothing.
How about this? He doesn't leave the prison, but because they're so short-staffed now, he has to be like he gets put in charge. I don't know. Look, there's a story. There's a way to do it.
There's
Oh,
something there.
maybe before he was in prison, he was a guard. So you get the prequel. Andor's the prequel. You get Kino Loy the prequel.
Kino Loy, there we go.
Yeah.
I love it. Any Andy Serkis, and anytime you get a good character and let him just characterize that character, just let the man play.
Yeah.
He's the best.
I'll be honest, it was my favorite thing was the 10 minutes where people like Snoke? Is it Snoke? Is it Snoke? Always makes me laugh. Snoke stuff always makes me laugh, like the way people are about
it was the Mephisto before Mephisto.
Yes. No. Oh man, I thought that was like just a very niche inside the industry, like the Mephisto thing. Yes. Oh, Mephisto days were fun. No. The fly is Mephisto. The curtains are Mephisto.
I do love the idea that we're gonna watch the
Ironheart.
The Ironheart show, and Mephisto's gonna say, "Yeah, I was in there the whole time," or whatever it's gonna end up being.
Oh yeah, that's right. They said, what's his name? Borat, Sacha Baron Cohen. The rumor is that he is coming in as Mephisto. I forgot about that part.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
Sacha Baron Cohen playing a devil.
I don't know much about Riri Williams. I know we're off the Star Wars, but it's still the Disney family. I don't know much about Riri Williams because she's a newer character, about 10 years old. So I'm kind of excited for Ironheart just because it's one character where I don't have a lot of preconceived notions of. Like, is this a character that is really going to be sort of defined by this show for me? And that's rare because I'm neck deep in Marvel stuff.
I've got hope. Secret Invasion lessens my hope.
Oof. Secret Invasion, that
one
may
actually
have gotten the sense that I always try to find the virtue.
I'm with you. I'm an optimistic person. You have to.
But boy, is it hard in that one because they took what was an incredible premise and failed to execute on every single level.
You had to take
and it also, I think it hurt the Marvels because the Marvels obviously took place before Secret Invasion. Like,
well, that's a whole other 2-hour conversation. And you know what? Yeah. We are reaching our 2 hours. Just
after 2 hours, I do charge extra. No.
Oh no. Well, we need to have another conversation.
Collect your pennies.
Come on, Paramount. We won't say the fun little thing. But whatchamacallit, hopefully this coming week, we'll have a Star Trek discussion with you about the Star Trek aspect of your book.
Oh yeah, Star Trek again, as it is. That's why it's called Divided Allegiance. The third waves of Star Trek and Star Wars now available on Amazon in the description below. Is because I love both Star Wars and Star Trek sort of equally. You know, I swing back and forth. Like with Andor right now, I'm very into it got me really back into Star Wars hardcore. So I've been writing a lot of Star Wars stuff. In June or July, whenever it debuts, I'm going to start reviewing Strange New Worlds. We'll go back to the Final Frontier, and I'm going to be talking about Cardassians and Klingons and warp speed and all that. Like it is a really good time. Look at that handsome.
There we are.
Book. Wow.
Bring it up here just so everybody can see it real quick.
338 pages. What a weighty tome. You can take that to the beach this summer.
It's perfect. I'm gonna go sit by the pool and open it up. I guess I have it in PDF form, so it's a little bit different. I'll start scrolling.
I will say also, if you prefer an ebook, this is just a paperback. If you prefer an ebook, there is one. It's called Sword, Spaceships, and Superheroes: Essays and Criticism in the Golden Age of Movies and Television. That is this book plus a bunch of other stuff more. It's all my Marvel writing, all my DC writing, stuff about Prestige TV. Like that book, if you were to put it in print, the ebook version, it would be longer than all but one of the Game of Thrones books, whatever the longest one is.
I like it.
Yeah, it is 15, maybe 20 years 15 years of various entertainment. Because even when I was a reporter, if I could write about entertainment, I would try to do it. Because stories have always been my favorite thing. I love that I get to spend my day talking about stories here, in these books over at CBR.com. I get to write about, they let me dive so deep into like the very nerdiest things. Like I can talk about weird things on Lost, or, I have, I have the article that we even failed to talk about how I think that the Rey Palpatine thing is better than Rey Nobody, because Star Wars is full of nobodies. And Rey Palpatine subverts the idea that, like, oh, your bloodline determines like your nature. You know what I mean? Like, it's trust me, it's better in the article. It makes more sense. Well, yeah, we get to breathe rarefied air, spending our time thinking and talking about these stories, because stories are empathy engines. I mean, we get to hear from each other and from the people in the chat, Secular Monk and Sarah and all them. We interact with the stories and learn something about ourselves through the stories, and then I hear how you feel about it, and then I know a little bit about how you see the world, and then we hear how everyone else does. And like, it's great to have Star Wars debates and Star Wars nerding things and Star Trek. But the reason I say, like, you never should say like the best or the worst, you should say I like or I don't like, because if I say I like this Star Wars or I don't like this Star Wars, it invites a conversation. If I say this is the worst Star Wars and it's your favorite, well, now we're going to have an argument.
Oh, yeah. That's where that vitriol will pop in.
Yeah. So, when people are like, oh, this is trash, or, Andor's the best and everything else, it's like, Andor's your favorite. Let's talk about why. But I'll tell you why I think Bad Batch does a lot of the same things Andor does, but for kids.
Yeah.
It's so much more fun to talk about this stuff. And the thing about like fandom online now is it can be very toxic, and there are people on this very website who are very successful saying very ridiculous and sometimes things that exclude people from being part of like the Star Wars fandom or the Star Trek fandom or whatever. And that's, if you understand these stories at all on the most basic level, that is the opposite of what this is about. Star Trek and Star Wars, very different, but they are about bringing in, Vulcans and your humans, and
they bring people together in a different
droids.
Way.
Yeah, like we all have something to contribute, and we may not all see it the same way, but so long as we don't, make the dark side choice where we're selfish and hate, and fear and anger, and we are, curious and kind, and we will. It brings us together. It doesn't have to drive you apart. And that's why I like. That's why I love SciTrek, because even when I disagree with your take about, say, Luke's story, or I disagree with Jay or Greg about their take on the third wave of Star Trek, they've never made me feel like they don't think that I'm as much of a Star Trek fan as them, because I think Discovery was a good show. Or that
even at the end of Jay ranting about dancing Klingons for a whole thing, he's going to say, I'm ranting because I love it. That's all. Yeah. He always ends it with that. He's like, I'm ranting because I wouldn't be talking about it if I didn't care,
Yeah. The musical Star Trek episode, it's the only one that I just, like, it is not for me, but I love that people love it. Like, I love that people love it. I was sitting there watching it, and I know there's a couple times in some songs that like plot stuff happened. I'm like, oh man, I gotta watch this song. But I remember thinking like, oh, it's going to be a terrible week online after this. And it wasn't. People were sharing video. I mean, there were some people mad about K-pop Klingons. But other than that, people were, it made the tent bigger. You always want to bring more people in. The party's never big enough.
And that's one that at least having a little like zany fun like that will bring people in. And, I think one of the things that Jay did, like kind of, and I think a lot of people did kind of get hung up on for one of our hang-ups there, to full circle it again, was it was just one of 10 episodes or one of 8 episodes versus like that 22 or 24 episode season. So I can get that, but that's also a conversation we could have.
And that gets more to the business side of things, but and put a pin in that, make a note, because I actually think I know why they do that.
Okay.
To do Star Trek. I think I know why they bleed so heavy into the funny, not typical Star Trek ones.
Okay.
And it relates to why Section 31 was the movie that it was.
Interesting.
So it's a fun tease for all you out there in the internet land for the next time I come back.
Because we are hoping to have, we'll talk about it in a few minutes, of course, about when we can have Jay to interview about the Star Trek half of the book. And then I'd love to actually read and tell you about, or of course, discuss and tell our wonderful chat about the Star Wars half of your book. But if you're ever down for another Star Wars conversation, if we need to start that conversation off, I'm starting it with somehow Palpatine returned. And if I don't say those words as the very first words of our next conversation for Star Wars, Sarah, yell at me next time we talk Star Wars.
The dead speak.
You know? But after that, we're I think gonna try another Greg conversation, hopefully with some more Star Trek soon. So yeah, we have a few things coming up. Joshua,
well, I've had an absolute blast. I thank you for hosting me. It's been a delight talking to you. I forgot we weren't just talking to each other. I forgot that we were doing it in front of the world. It's a pleasure to say hi, get to sort of meet in this chat way, Sarah and Secular Monk and everyone else, Peter. It was, yeah, just an absolute delight. I had a blast, Harris.
Well, thank you for hanging. It's a few weeks in the making, and I'm glad we sat down to do it. Of course, you know, not necessarily in the way we planned, but
yeah,
if you plan things, you got to be ready for round two. The backup
you got to follow the flow of the living force. It guides you where you need to go.
You know, whether it's oh, and Juliet, thank you for being in here the whole time as well.
Juliet.
Thank you. Because we will have hopefully a few more great shows for you. We have a couple planned, and they're gonna be great. But in the meantime, y'all, you know what you need to do. You got to read. We've got homework.
You read the book. You imagine my voice. It sounds just like you're listening to a video.
So
I was told by my kid that I write just like I talk. I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
I'd say so. We just goofed off talking for 2 hours about just one and kind of like a half topics about other things we enjoy. I'd say if you're writing 15 to 20 years worth of knowledge in that, hell yeah. But booyah. That is it from us, y'all. Hopefully we will be back this coming week. If not, we will let you know exactly when we're doing it. We were planning that out.
And
y'all are part of the plans. We need a fun little Star Wars version of this.
They don't have we need a Star Wars hand signal. That's true. Like because
50 years in the making. I don't know why we don't have one yet. You know? But again, thank y'all so much for being here. It's been a great time. And we'll see y'all soon. I'm going to move us out of here so y'all can read this just a little bit better. Y'all have a good one. Bye.